Welcome to episode 5 of Feeling Through Live. Today we're talking about a really important topic that affects all of us in some way, everyone around the world really, and that's the topic of loss and coping with loss. Whether that loss is loss of a job, loss of life as we knew it before a couple months ago, or in the most challenging circumstances, loss of a loved one, which is what we'll be focusing on a little bit more today. This is certainly a topic that affects everyone. We are really honored to be joined by Chris Woodfill of the Helen Keller National Center. Chris is the Associate Executive Director there and also someone that I have the distinct pleasure of calling a friend. Chris, why don't you start off by introducing yourself?
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate the opportunity to join you today for the 5th episode of Feeling Through Live. It's really an honor to participate today. My name is Christopher Woodfill, and I am the Associate Executive Director of the Helen Keller National Center. I am deafblind. And Doug and I had spoken about 2 topics that we'd like to address today. One being that of loss. 5 weeks ago, I lost my life partner who passed away. Her name was Elissa Zucker. And that is still a struggle and a process that I'm going through. At the same time, we could talk about my life's journey as a deaf person, becoming a deafblind person. And, after a while, we will talk a little bit about those 2 points throughout this afternoon.
Thank you, Chris, for setting that up. So now that we have a bunch of people tuned in, thank you for everyone who's watching today. Chris, there's no easy way to jump into this topic, so I'm going to just jump right into it and ask you if you could take us back to and walk us through what happened to give us some context to this conversation.
Yes, it's going to be a bit challenging to explain Elissa's passing. I haven't even received her death certificate yet, and it's been 33 days. The medical examiner report has yet to be created or received to find out specifically what she passed away from. So that is still in question. But I will give you the context of it, and please bear with me that it is difficult. In terms of course, everybody knows about COVID-19 and really the role that coronavirus played in Elissa's passing. I'd like to talk a little bit about Elissa first. She has worked at the Helen Keller National Center for about 17 years. She started in 2003 and had a variety of roles within the center. She's worn a number of hats. Most recently, she is an independent living instructor. In terms of her passing, it's a little complicated. So when COVID-19 sort of took note, Elissa does have underlying health issues, both mental and physical. So it is a combination of both. Her physical health issues included asthma, a very, very severe case of asthma. She had an enlarged heart. as well as a hole in her heart, which caused her to have a constant murmur. And she was also a borderline diabetic, type 2, and would be classified as obese. So from a physical standpoint, those are her physical underlying illnesses. In terms of mental health issues, she was diagnosed as bipolar disorder. And there have been several bumps in the road since that diagnosis in terms of her mental health. She has had hospitalizations, has gotten assistance where she'd be in for a week or two to become stabilized and then would return home, and life would go on as normal. But there were a few instances where she would have to go in and sort of be restabilized. So I think it's really important to understand the whole picture from a contextual standpoint. Her mental health declined significantly during this time. The 2 weeks leading up to her death, she was in a full-blown breakdown as a result of the coronavirus, to the point where she was in a catatonic state in some instances, where she would not respond to any stimulus whatsoever. And that was really her being the majority of the day. She was not inclined to be prompted by touch, sight, smell, hearing. And after, trying to engage her repeatedly in conversation, trying to see if I could sort of bring her to perhaps get some mental health assistance. One of the things that we were talking about, maybe we could take her to the hospital so that she could become stabilized again, was something that I was considering. But each time I brought that up, the answer was met with a resounding no. And that no was twofold. One was that the mental health hospitals on Long Island and New York City were at capacity. People really flocked to them during this time of the pandemic. And the only way really to get through that 72-hour hold was going through the emergency room. And in light of where we were, that's not where you wanted to be, because the ERs tended to be filled with people with symptoms of coronavirus. So because of her underlying asthma, that didn't seem like a viable alternative. In speaking with an EMT, it was really recommended that she stay home and that she would come out of it, that she would come out of this catatonic state. And again, this was 3 different attempts at trying to determine how to help her through this. And the last time I called, they said, please stop calling 911. It's not appropriate to use 911 resources in this manner. You know what you need to do, and that we can't take her straight to a mental health facility, that it has to be done through the emergency room, and you've stated that you don't want those services. So that was quite a conundrum for me. During that 2-week period prior to her passing, there were 2 major groups that I relied upon. The first being the medical community, her psychiatrist, psychologist, people of that nature, who would be providing, medication and treatment and things of that nature. And that group was very supportive and helpful. And my reliance upon the psychiatrist in nature, in particular, as he increased her medication, was somebody that I relied upon. The second group of people that I relied upon were folks that brought me food and beverages and drinks and sustenance. They were aware of Elissa's condition, and they were there to support both of us and provide for both of us during her breakdown. And they provided quite a bit of support. During the final days of her life, she was completely catatonic, virtually all day. And I would have to try to get her up and, really get her to do your basic needs, using the restroom, eat, drink. Those basic survival skills became what got us through. So it would take about 30 minutes to get her to prompt to do any one of those things. Anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour. It would take probably, I guess, 5-ish. I don't remember the exact time it was, but it was later in the afternoon. I tried to rouse her, and she looked better. She looked a lot better, and I took that as a really positive sign. And then she resumed the catatonic state. About 9:30 in the evening on this particular day, 9:45, she woke up and was completely herself. And I'm like, hey, wow, I was really excited to see her. And it seemed that she was completely alert. And it was almost like she was in this stage of being half alert and partially catatonic. But much more so than she had been in the prior weeks. She was awake and alert. She went and took a shower. She was able to bathe and did that all completely on her own. And then she came down and sat down. She said, I don't feel very well. Her breathing was labored. I found her inhaler for her and gave it to her. She took a couple of puffs and seemed to be doing a little bit better. She was able to eat a little bit and drink a little bit. Brought her some grape juice. She was able to keep that down. Ate a little bit. She had some mandarin oranges, a little container of them. So she was able to eat a little bit. And she was, where's my iPhone? And I was like, okay, so we got her iPhone and I gave it to her. And she called her best friend. Her name is Vib, V-I-B. Her best friend, though, lives in Arizona. And so she wasn't able to get through. So she called another friend, Gabby, who lives very, very close to our home in Port Washington. And again, when she answered the phone, it was like, oh, okay. She came right over and came over. I unlocked the door and brought her in. And there were issues with her breathing again. And we realized that her lips had turned blue. And we realized that at that point that there was something significant. We knew that she was dying. And, it was a frenzy to figure out what to do at that point. I started CPR. And there was no response. She wasn't breathing. When I put my hand on her chest, there was no heartbeat. It felt almost like a ghost. I didn't feel anything. There was just nothing there. So, I was like, Elissa, where are you? I just couldn't feel her heartbeat, her breath. There was nothing there. So I started CPR. The EMTs arrived very quickly. I mean, within a couple of minutes, they were at our door. And Gabby came over as well to assist with the interpreting during that time. And what that looked like was that Gabby doesn't know sign language, but she and Elissa were very, very close. And so she came and she would text me the EMT's questions. So, and that's how we would correspond. I would text back to her, she would relay the message to the EMT, and that's how we got communication to work while they were performing CPR on Elissa. Now, in light of the coronavirus, there are no new regulations as far as how to provide CPR, which I had just come to learn. Prior to the coronavirus, if somebody had a heart attack and they needed to have CPR initiated, they would start that and then bring them to the emergency room. And then at the hospital, the determination would be determined whether to continue life-sustaining assistance or to not. However, during the coronavirus, that is not the case. The policy has changed. In terms of providing CPR in the field, it is for 30 minutes. If there is no heartbeat, the person is deemed deceased and they are not brought to the hospital. And that's exactly what happened. We went round and round for 30 minutes to no avail. They were not able to get a heartbeat and declared her dead. And that was very difficult. That process is still very difficult to digest and to think about, you know, the actual passing. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing all that. If you're just tuning in, we're joined by Chris Woodfill of the Helen Keller National Center. The topic today is loss and healing in the time of COVID, and Chris has just bravely and very articulately shared his experience of recently losing a loved one, Elissa Zucker, quite recently within the last 5 weeks or so. Chris, as you've really beautifully articulated, it sounds like it's obviously always very challenging to lose someone. You did also do a good job of talking about the additional challenges during this current time, during a time where we have an EMT system and a hospital system that is overtaxed and therefore needing to change their normal policies in a way that, unfortunately, in your case, made things a lot more difficult. That's one of the realities of what has been happening over the last number of weeks, and
Yes.
One of the unfortunate realities of it. For those of you who are tuning in, who knew Elissa, this is, this episode is certainly dedicated to her. If you'd like to drop a comment, a memory of her, just a sentence about her, a memory that you'd like to share while we're having this, we'd certainly appreciate seeing those. Chris, I'm sure this is obviously still very fresh for you. But if you could kind of share, I think it would be really valuable for other people out there who might be going through a similar experience for you to share what your healing process has been like thus far.
Yes, sure. Well, the first week was horrific, honestly. Elissa passed at 11:15 p.m. That's when the EMTs stopped performing CPR and declared it. Her body was left in our home for 4 hours until she was able to be taken away at 3:30 a.m. And that was incredibly difficult for me. I have had other experiences of death. So this is not the first death. This is actually the second death that I had witnessed, but the first was very quick, and the coroner was able to come pick up the body within 45 minutes and take the body to be taken care of. This was much more exaggerated, and that was very challenging for me. I stayed upstairs in the bedroom. Elissa was in our living room where we had left her. We had put a blanket on her. Gabby was outside waiting for the coroner. She was waiting in her car for the medical examiner to pick up Elissa's body. And she would text me when they arrived. But, you know, I was upstairs and I would come back and really look, because it was, this is a bad dream. Is she really gone? And I would multiple times go back and look at her body and say, okay, this is real. And then go back upstairs. And then maybe 30 or 45 minutes later, go back and check again and see her laying there and realize that, okay, this is real. And that happened at least 3 or 4 times, where I just would keep checking and saying, oh my God, this is real. And then of course I started texting my family and Elissa's family and Helen Keller, and really just started to let people know. Once they had taken her, I couldn't sleep. I mean, my mind was just stuck in a vicious loop where it would just replay like a movie stuck in a loop. And I couldn't break that cycle. I couldn't stop the loop. You know, and this would go, you know, I'd lay down for 15 minutes and then wake up again, 30 minutes and come up again. And I just couldn't get that cycle out of my mind. I felt like I was going crazy. And I just had never had something run like that in my mind over and over again, ever. I did have one friend of mine, Kathy Anello, had come to my house. She works with me at the Helen Keller National Center. You know, we had broken that policy of not seeing other people, and she did come over to my home and she just talked to me. And that's what helped get me out of that cycle. That's what broke it. And that was a huge step. And that really is when the healing process began for me. When I was able to get out of that loop, to stop it, is where it began. It's still terrible and it's still hard to do things. You know, I had to focus on her funeral, her burial. We had a Shiva via Zoom that needed to be coordinated and set up. After her burial, we had a Zoom Shiva meeting, for lack of a better word, where I felt much more at peace, because I was able to grant her everything that she wanted. She was a very religious person. She was raised as an Orthodox Jew, and as an adult, really considered herself to be more conservative. But at her core, she was still Orthodox. And she still observed all of her religious rituals. And I wanted to honor that for her in her death. So we wanted to make sure, and that is no small feat. There are a number of things that you have to do in a particular order. And it was almost like a checklist that I was able to do all of those things on her behalf and in her honor. And that's when I started to feel at peace. And that was the beginning of my journey toward healing. And I'm certainly still on that journey. I look at it as making a choice. You make a choice as to how you're going to respond to a situation. You don't have any choice in what happens to you. What happens, happens. It is what it is. But you absolutely have a choice in how you respond to it. And my choice was to look at all of the positive memories we had 7.5 years together of loving each other and creating memories and creating that bond and relationship. And that's what I chose to focus on, as opposed to her untimely death, how it happened, the impact of COVID-19, but really her ability to survive the pandemic. It was a choice not to focus on her death and the things that happened leading up to it, but rather focus on who we were as a couple, honor that, cherish that, and really focus on it. I chose to focus on the reality, of having to do things differently. Elissa's iPhone has over 25,000 photographs. It will take me forever to look at each and every one of those photos. I've probably looked at about 500 a day, roughly. And at first, it was very difficult to do that. I found myself crying frequently, really almost catching my breath. But I continued, and I continue to look at the pictures and to scroll through them. And there were some that I delete along the way. And now I've had that down to actually 11,000 photographs that I haven't seen yet. So that's my way of almost confronting it and facing reality of Elissa's passing.
Mm.
Some people choose to avoid. I'm more of a head-on type of guy. It's not easy. Please, it is not easy. I don't enjoy it. It is not fun, but it is helpful. And it has helped me move forward with life and living. I've also chosen more of a positive path of healing instead of avoidance, where that could turn, sweeping things under the rug, maybe turning to drinking or some kind of other drug abuse or whatever it is that others negative things that could happen if you avoid situations. I've chosen to take it more head on, think positively, and just keep taking it step by step. And that's helping me in this healing process. Really get through this tragedy. I could comment more, but I'll give you the floor.
Well, let's take a moment for an interpreter switch. All right, are we all set?
Yep.
Great. So thank you, Chris, again for sharing that. For those joining us, Chris Woodfill of HKNC is sharing the recent loss of a loved one and also how he's been coping with that loss. I think some of the things that really resonated for me in listening to your story that I hope are valuable to other people listening who might be experiencing loss themselves is the way in which you've decided to face this loss head on, to not try to avoid it, to not have it manifest in unhealthy ways, but to really take an opportunity to deal with it head on, obviously deal with the painful elements of it, but also find it to be a time where you can really honor the love and memories that you had for Elissa. And I think that's, really inspiring for me to hear, And I hope that other people who might be going through a similar situation who are tuning in today or find this episode later, I hope those words comfort them as well. And I think there's also just something great about knowing that we're not alone in this experience. Certainly times are a little bit bizarre right now in having to cope with this remotely, so to speak, but that doesn't mean we're alone. But I want to go actually back to something that you were just talking about a moment ago. I had the honor to sit in on the Zoom. I had the honor to sit in on the Zoom Shiva for Elissa, and that was certainly the first time I'd ever experienced anything like that through Zoom. But it was still a really wonderful event. Maybe if you could just, that's a very untraditional format for that, but obviously a really necessary one right now. Maybe if you could just take a moment or two to just walk through that specific experience being something that's such, as you mentioned, an important way to honor her memory, but also a very untraditional way to do it.
Yes. Yes, that's correct, Doug. So during the time that we were together, Elissa shared with me, some of her desires and what she may want in different aspects of her life. So I was quite familiar with what her wishes may be. So thinking of a Zoom Shiva was not exactly on the list, as you can imagine, but I definitely wanted to have a Shiva, though, in honor of Elissa. And also to really look at a way to have a celebration to recognize Elissa. As instead of just staying in our grief, I wanted to have some sort of uplifting experience and a way of sharing with others. So I thought, okay, let's think of how to do this. So I had a conversation with her rabbi, and I asked if there was a way to do a Zoom Shiva. And they said, yes, it was allowable, that they had hosted a few of those and just kind of small in number for participants. And I said, well, actually, I don't think you know Elissa. She has a very large community. So this is not going to be a gathering of 10 to 15 people. And they said, well, all right, I guess we can max it at 50. And I said, no, I don't think that's going to make it. And so the rabbi said, well, let's see how this turns out. So I posted it with others, both on my Facebook page and on Elissa's. And oh my, I got message after message. Everyone was expressing how they wanted to participate with us. And it was over 500 people. I said to the rabbi, you better up the room. We really have the capacity to have more. We need to have more than 500 be able to join us. Now, we weren't expecting that exact number. I think live we had approximately 85 join for the Shiva. Even that alone seemed quite incredible. I mean, considering the platform that we were hosting a Shiva in. But for me, I felt it was so important to have some sort of closure to that very traumatic experience that felt so lengthy. And I felt so satisfied that I really was able to check off those really critical points that Elissa wanted us to follow. And so being able to host it even in a Zoom platform, it wasn't on her list, but at least having a Shiva was. And
I have to say, being one of the participants, it very, very quickly, the format of it evaporated, and it really was just felt like we were really all there together, and it was really amazingly executed. So definitely worked out really, really well in that sense. Chris,
thank you very much, Doug, for joining.
I want to also acknowledge, I had the distinct pleasure of getting to know Elissa over the last couple of years, largely through her support of the Feeling Through experience, of which you were an integral part of as well. And, one of the fondest memories I have of Elissa is just how enthusiastic she was. She was her passion for what we were doing in helping spread awareness for the deafblind community and making these accessible events. Her passion really helped fuel my passion often, because she was just so enthusiastic and passionate about supporting that message. And when she got involved with something, she really, really loved to go above and beyond to help and support. And, I only have the most positive memories of her in that way, because she was so unbelievably supportive of what we were doing with the Feeling Through experience. And that's how I remember her.
Oh, yes. And I'd love to add, Doug, I don't know if you realize or not specifically, but I remember it was your mother and Elissa. They really had a wonderful relationship. Did you know that they developed a relationship?
I know to some degree. Yeah.
Yes, she was actually very excited about making that connection. I think it was one of her aims. How do I make connections, particularly with Doug and his mother? And I really think that, through the whole process of the project, that was actually a beautiful outcome.
And I think it just speaks volumes of her. She was someone that you could meet and instantly feel like she was part of your, close friends or family. She had that kind of warmth to her.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I also just remember one of the first times she ever reached out, when she first learned about the Feeling Through experience and wanted to support it. I loved how big her vision was. She was right off the bat. She was like, we got to get this on Ellen. We got to get this all over the news. We got to get this on every TV show.
Yes.
She was writing letters to people, writing letters to like Ellen and TV shows. And I was always moved by her, how much she was willing to really get behind and support.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is
yeah, Doug, I actually still have all those letters. I definitely will save them. I was looking at them on her iPhone, and maybe if you want a copy of them for yourself, I'd be very happy to take a look and send them to you. So I've saved files of those, and I know she was just getting them out there to all different platforms. She was really so excited about Feeling Through.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd certainly love a copy of that. And, we still have plenty of time left today, but I'm already realizing that the other topics that we wanted to discuss, I'm going to have you back on another episode, because that's a whole episode in and of itself. And I'd really like, just with the time we have left, to continue talking about you and Elissa. And we've had an opportunity, again, thank you so much for being so open in sharing the challenges of losing her. Again, it's something that is a reality. It's a reality for a lot of people right now. And I think there's something really valuable in you sharing in such an open and honest way. But also beyond that, sharing your process of starting to heal, which again, you're still early in, but have shared so eloquently, speaking about your really leaning into what's happening, not avoiding it, but really addressing it head on, while also finding the time to honor her memory. So, I'd actually love to hear from you.
Yes.
I'm sure there's so many memories to choose from, but maybe right now would be a great time to take a moment to why don't you just share a really great memory of the two of you? I'd love to hear about that.
Oh, yes, sure. I think I'd like to share about how we met. That might be a good way. It was actually quite interesting. At the time, I was a consumer myself at Helen Keller National Center in 2008 during the summer. I went there for an 8-week program. At that time, I was a teacher at the Wisconsin School for the Deaf. So I was busy doing my teaching, but I was struggling with my vision. And I can talk about that another time, perhaps in a future episode. But I was having some struggles with my own journey in terms of identity. And so I went to Helen Keller for some training. And Elissa actually was my vocational employment instructor. So she was the training specialist in that department. And her role was really to help me to strategize in ways in which I could preserve the position I had as a teacher as my vision may continue to decline. So that was an interesting experience. And I have to say, Elissa was a little nervous in that interaction. You can see that sometimes she would appear a little anxious. And Elissa explained to me that I had just been transferred to her 15 minutes prior to our first engagement. They had just switched me out. And so she was a little uncomfortable because she didn't get a chance to know about my background or really understand who I was as a person. So she came into it a little bit awkward. So we sat and we chatted and we connected just really well. Now, granted, she's the teacher and I was there as the client. But I could tell, you know, her relationship with the other instructors was wonderful. And I also connected with those people as well. So I had left and I maintained contact with some of the instructors, and Elissa was one of them. We kept in touch through Facebook and other means of communication, email, texting sometimes while I was back in my home state. Now, I continue to come to Helen Keller at different points, because I was actually coming specifically to run the youth program that took place in the summer. It's a young adult training program. So I was asked to come and facilitate that. So over the course of those visits, you know, sometimes I would then meet with some of the instructors that I had had before when I was a client there, and Elissa was one of them. So then I moved here to New York City and officially began a position as the regional representative at Helen Keller National Center. So I had vacated my position in Wisconsin, moved to New York. And I had heard at that time that Elissa's roommate had moved out. And she herself was looking for a roommate. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, you know, the timing of it all. So I asked her, I said, oh, I heard you're looking for a roommate. I literally had just moved. I had no place to live just yet. I had just relocated. And Elissa said, oh, all right, come take a look at the place. And I said, oh, so I came, realized it was a beautiful place. And she said, do you want to take a look around at other locations? And I said, no, I know what I like. I know what I need. And once I know if I like something, I just make a decision. I don't need to waste my time and energy going around looking at other places. So I immediately moved in. So as I did, you know, we began our friendship. We became closer. We got closer. And that's really the development. The foundation of our relationship was out of friendship that way. And then we just remained together and grew together. So when I look back over a course of time, my goodness, the memories are many. Let me think about some of our favorites. Well, when we traveled together, we very much like to be able to go I'm trying to remember the full name of it, the DDD diners, you know, where you can check out the different levels of the different locations to eat and entertain. So, you know, the chef Fieri, he's the one with that big white spiky hairdo. So he hosts those. I think it's the diners, dives, drive-ins, you know, that label. So we would look for those that were listed on his website. And so we would see the ones that he ranked. And you could always find one of the DDD restaurants wherever you were. So we would always make that part of our journey when we were on the road. So we were able to meet a lot of Guy Fieri's restaurants that he had already highlighted on his show. And then we would post pictures and we would always tag it as one of those on Facebook. Now, granted, I've done a lot of posting, and Elissa's done a lot of posting, so you'd have to scroll way back. And if you have time for that, you'd see a lot of these DDD restaurants that we had visited. So that's something that I really enjoyed. And one of the other ones, and was one of our trips, would be over the course of a weekend. We would go out to Montauk, which is the tip of Long Island, or out to Sag Harbor, which are some really beautiful locations. Sag Harbor is just a stunningly beautiful location on Long Island, or out to the Hamptons. Those would be weekend trips. And we would just kind of jaunt around. And over the course of the weekend, you know, we may stop in and stay over at a hotel and really just take our time. We've also traveled quite extensively throughout the world. We've been to Dubai. We've been to Spain together, France, Mexico, Panama, St. John, St. Thomas. We've been to a whole variety of locations throughout the globe, of course, and throughout America as well. We've done a lot of domestic travel. So I have to say, the experiences we have together are extremely rich. Eating out at a multitude of restaurants and having a variety of experiences that were shared together. Oh my goodness, the salt caves that we experienced were wonderful. That's one of the really cool things I can mention now. Oh my gosh. Really, there are so many, Doug. I mean, we've done so many things together. Oh my goodness. And also we have been to so many Broadway performances. I'm a big theater goer, so we've been to so many Broadway shows. And so the list is endless of the thoughts I could share with you. And again, this is a great way for me to share and to think of the healing process, is to look back on those experiences and those memories in a really positive manner, and all the ways we really enjoyed each other.
Those are really great memories. Thanks for sharing that, Chris. If you're watching right now and you have your own memories of Elissa, please feel free to write them in the comments. We'd certainly love to see those after. Chris, I'm just wondering, you know, obviously you've walked us through to this point that you're at now. I believe you also traveled from New York to Pennsylvania to be with family now. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I left New York to be with my family here in Pennsylvania, you know, for a short period of time. This is almost a little bit of a coronavirus free zone, shall we say. There really are no identified cases right near where I am. So it allows me to feel a little, I don't know, disconnected from the reality of the situation in New York. You know, I needed that disconnect to be able to focus on myself and to be in a safe place. And so I can focus on my healing and moving forward. So that is the exact reason I came here, and to be able to focus on those steps in healing. Mm-hmm.
So with the last 10 minutes or so we have today, if there's anyone who's watching who has any questions or thoughts they'd like to share, please write those in the comments. We'll try to get to those with the remainder of the time we have. But I'm also wondering, Chris, you know, this might be a hard question to answer because there's uncertainty for everyone right now. But as you look forward, as best as you can talk about that right now, what does that look like for you moving forward?
Okay, Doug, moving forward. Well, I know that I plan to stay here in Pennsylvania for a period of time, particularly as it relates to the shelter and home mandates in New York and when things are allowed to be opened up again. We're not entirely sure when that will be. I mean, I'm able to work from home, and of course, everyone at Helen Keller is currently working from home. There's no one at the center. So it actually doesn't matter in terms of my physical location. I can still maintain my work. So my plan then, when we are able to sort of open things up back in New York, I will go back home. Whenever that is, remains a bit of a puzzle. Regardless, I had made a request, shall we say, to Elissa's family in regards to her possessions, that once I return back home, I do want to be allowed the honor to go through and identify, my items, Elissa's, and then I will turn those over to her family once that is completed. That is definitely going to be a very difficult part of this entire process. I'm not quite ready. I'm not quite there to start that process, but I do know that that's a reality of a loss, is having to actually go through her things before then I can turn them over to her family. As it relates to my work with Helen Keller, I don't have any plans for any changes. I really plan to maintain my work. I'm in it for the long haul. I'm happy to maintain the position, and Helen Keller is supporting me through that. Things do seem a little fuzzy right now in terms of kind of the next step after the sifting through. That seems to be a big hurdle that's ahead of me. So to see what's beyond that sort of mountain is a little bit challenging. But I know that I'll find my way. I'll have to navigate through this process to get to the other side.
So for a moment, I'd like to ask you, for anyone who's watching this right now or is going to watch this later, speaking directly to them, particularly anyone who might be going through a similar loss themselves, is there anything you'd like to share with them, those people directly, speaking from your own experience, any words of wisdom or anything that you'd like to say, speaking directly to those people?
Mm-hmm. Well, like I shared before, no one has a choice about what happens to them. That's not our choosing. However, everyone has a choice in how they respond to what has happened to them. So I guess I would want to encourage others to look at that response in as positive a way as they can, because you will have and experience positive outcomes, even to difficult things that have happened to you. I really do think it is a choice. And I think you can make that choice quite wisely. So I guess that's my main recommendation to people who are going through something similar as this. And secondly, again, looking back to the immediate loss, I could not, within the first week, I couldn't even see past the first hour. I couldn't even think about tomorrow. I really had to focus on the absolute immediate future. I had to focus on myself. What am I doing in the next moment? And just literally take it step by step, and to continue to do that in a mindful way. And I knew I would come out on the other end, but I had to take it literally moment by moment and focus on the near future.
I think that's great advice, Chris, and great words to share. Again, as we stated earlier in this broadcast, there are certainly many people out there, many of which might be tuning into this episode, who can certainly relate to to what you're going through. And I think hearing directly from you and your experience goes a long way in a collective healing. And for everyone who's going through something like this, to know that there's other people going through it and to hear from them means a lot. So again, really want to thank you for how open you've been about your experience and sharing it. And, you know, personally really appreciate it. I'm sure there's a lot of people watching who really appreciate it. With the last few minutes here, if you're watching and you'd like to write a note to Chris that he'll be able to find here on this thread later, please feel free to do so. If you'd like to share a memory of Elissa, please feel free to do so as well. Once we finish this live broadcast, this video will remain on the page and you can share with other people.
Well, I have to tell you, right now I am on Zoom, so I have it up very close to me. I won't be able to read all these comments right now, but I very much look forward to reading them at a later time so I can go back and scroll through.
And again, just want to dedicate this episode to Elissa Zucker, someone who certainly had a huge impact on the lives of everyone who's a part of this conversation today. And I'm sure a lot of you tuning in. Chris, with just the final moment or two here, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Sure, Doug. Knowing Elissa the way I do, I know Elissa wants everyone to be happy. That's always her aim. She could always see the happiness and the spark in people. Now, during the pandemic, she still was sending out little kind of nuggets of positivity to people. She was still sharing jokes and moments of laughter with others. And so I would like people to continue to do the same thing, spread that joy. Knowing through this passing, we know that this craziness and this pandemic phase we're in will pass. We will be in a better place. So I want to know that I am with you and that her thoughts are also with us. And we will challenge. And I know that I will struggle emotionally through this, as many of us will. But we know in the future, things will get better. And I hope that you will carry that with you. That would be Elissa's message.
Thank you, Chris. I think that's an amazing place to end today's episode. I want to thank you again so much for joining us. You'll certainly have to come back again soon because there's so many other topics that we want to talk about with you that we'll certainly get into soon.
Oh, Doug, I very much look forward to that.
But really, really appreciate, again, the openness with which you shared everything. Thank you so much to our interpreters, Angela and Susie, our captioner, Laura. Again, Feeling Through Live will be here every Friday at the same time, 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. If you liked what you saw today, this video will still be on our page after the conclusion of this live broadcast. Please share it with other people. If you know other people that you feel like might be interested in future episodes, please tell them to follow our page. Soon we'll also be on other platforms, particularly YouTube. So if you want to follow our YouTube page, if that's a better place to watch in the future, we'll be airing live episodes there as well. And you can just type in the Feeling Through experience and find us there and subscribe to that channel. And again, just want to end on the very last note of honoring the memory of Elissa Zucker and the lovely, amazing person that she was and the many lives that she impacted. And it was really an honor to be able to spend this time with you today, Chris, to talk about how you're doing and also honor her memory. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. Lots of love to everyone.
Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend.